Good afternoon. I'll be very happy to share with you my experiences with Scott Park in the last 1.5 years. A village situated between Hong Kong and Shenzhen in the remote countryside. Like a few other villages over there, the backdrop is a mountain facing the harbor. And then because of the population drops and the abandonment of the agriculture in the last 50 years, the village, the seawater seeps through the embankment and then make a beautiful and wonderful, important mangrove ecological site. And now the project has been trying to moderate conserve, or thinking about how to conserve, but at the same time revitalize these Hakka villages as well as this very important habitat for ecology. The first thing we do, research. Without knowing the condition, the first thing is to understand its landscape, its architecture, before we can make any strategy. South of the Shuttlecock Starling Inlet, there are four villages that demonstrate similar patterns, with a valley and a mountain behind and woods behind. And in the past 100 years, the settlements, Hakka settlements from China, take this land, immigrants here build settlements and start to build embankment and then form a fish pond and gradually paddy fields, agricultural lands. As I said, in the past 50 years, this place is gradually turned into where the seawater, tidal changes, and the freshwater interface and provide excellent places for mangrove and other wetland ecology. From Nanchong and Loking, the two settlements where the red markers is the end of the vehicular transportation. To the villages of Gopok, to the far right, we walk about 40 minutes across beautiful coastal lines with sedimentary rocks, red rocks, with beaches, with many other valleys and many other different coastline geography and landscape. The Gopok village with supreme feng shui in the Chinese traditional notion, facing the harbor, and you can look beyond the high density part of the Shenzhen Yantian district was there. And contrastly, the Hong Kong side become extremely green and natural places. The wetland, including not only mangrove, but also marshlands. And then on the left-hand side, it was the village temple, and the school. On the right-hand side is the shops and also the piers. The transformation of the land is an evolutionary process and is still a dynamic process. From 1960s on the left, paddy fields, to the 2000s that shows a mixtures of mangrove and other habitats. This is not only Gopok, but the four villages that I was talking about along the harbor show similar features of transformation that agriculture in the 60s to now the sort of conservation site. And therefore we start to think, this should not be a kind of a fixed condition of a conservation. Actually, not only this site, these lands, this ecology are still in the process of evolution. At the same time, different villages has different degree and potentials of condition of ecology, cultural resources. Those more adjacent to the major transportation, they have the potential of developing to more activities and recreation, while those in the more remote areas has great potential to conserve ecology and then give priority for subsidy. We also look at the landscape of the mountains and the woods behind the mountain and the grasslands, and gradually and the village house that on the foothill, and then the reed bed, and then the mangrove, and also the waterway that running from the valley. There are 4 or 5 waterway cutting through that, meandering through the wetlands and create varieties of habitat. The tree species developed right next to the water flow within the landscape produce variety of landscape patterns, and also the embankment along the water that generate sediments and larger, bigger trees, and also on the other heights, seawater, and then through the 2 gates that the tidal waves daily enter into the wetlands and then retreat out to the ocean. The section shows from the right the mountain, the woods, and the paddy fields, and now the wetlands and the ocean to the left. And we also look at the feng shui wood, the woods that behind the villages that through years of integration of man-made, artificial, and natural mixtures of species developed, and also varieties of flora, fauna habitats along the different type of wetlands. We look at the reed bed. We study the reed bed and the birds and the crabs, and we study when we move into the freshwater marshes and the bushes around it, and different type of butterflies and birds over there, and further into the valleys and the bigger trees and the different species around it. So the question for us is, how do we moderate the wetland, the water dynamic? How much do we understand them? And how do we sustain the current biodiversity, and how we foresee what it will happen in the next 20 or 50 years? And there should be a certain research and also guidelines constantly being moderated by expert group, not only architects, actually ecologists. Then, of course, we look at architecture, which is, you know, quite well. We look at the traditional villages for the first settlement, Lao Wei, and then Lao Wai, and then the San Wai, and then the new settlement developed in the last 200 years. We look at the school, the public buildings, the stores, and then we look at and for this one, the Hakka War Village built in late Qing Dynasty, mid to late Qing Dynasty, exhibit very similar characteristics as many others in Hong Kong and in this region. We look at about 100 years later, during the late Qing Dynasty and early Republican, the relaxation of the safety concerns, the villagers start to move out from the Lao Wei and build a second settlement, which is linear, back to the on the back with the backdrop of the woods and facing their fields, their paddy fields in front. We survey over 100 of houses, and we find out different type of so-called Hakka architecture. Actually, it's an evolution of hundreds of years. You have traditional three modular bay courtyard houses with traditional Canton bricks and stone and the local materials, rocks from the seaside, and to make the ram earth. The prototype, we believe the prototype 200 years ago, most of the buildings are with small atrium courtyard houses. But through the years, the population grow, and the the family subdivided, and every room start to become one house units in such. And then we see a development of row houses. We see development of two-story houses in after the Republican, and even to the 70s, the kind of early concrete house with ceramic tile. Therefore, we make a speculation of the different type of architecture in this village and the surrounding villages that from the courtyard house prototype developed into sort of early 70s row houses. This variety of houses, so every time when we say by Gio's Hakka architecture, so what kind of Hakka architecture are they? How much do we know, and then how much knowledge do we know, and how do we are able to set criteria to conserve or revitalize them. Not only the building type, but also material. The timber construction of rafter, purlins, the masonry construction of brick, of stone, and rammers, and it exhibited very rich and beautiful with that demonstrate different not only material but also the different period of time, like the very typical popular this red plaster that in the 60s, and also this ceramic tiles in the 70s, more contemporary, but also is a unique characteristic of the region. And therefore, conservation is not definitely, it's a moderating process. How do we conserve and moderate the changes in the last 200 years and the changes for the coming 50 years? How do we revitalize and sustain? How do we, there's a difference between renovate, to restore, or to reconstruct. We certainly are not to restore everything back to 200 years ago, because there are also buildings differently in 100 years ago and the last 50 years. But probably it's important that we control or moderate the fabric, the size of the building in terms of volume, height, lot boundary, and the material. And the most importantly, authenticity. We respect the truthness of the material. We don't pretend that make everything back to 200 years ago. We reconstruct, we build new, but with great sensitivity and maybe some principle of similarity. More importantly, it's reversible. The new material that we put in, can they be natural material? Can they have low carbon traces? And can we always have opportunity to reverse that back to the originals? So these are possible principles that we are considering. Of course, we work with people. First thing we do, there's no map. So we draw a map for the villagers and for the visitors. So that in the process of drawing this map, we also identify significant architecture, and not only the villagers start to differentiate these buildings, but also for the villagers and also for the visitors, and have a sense of place, but also sense of orientation about the place. We decide that for the previous research we do, we get to know a few villages, but then we decide to say, maybe we have exhibition. Maybe we should show the exhibitors. Maybe should find a place to have a gallery, temporary gallery, to allow the villagers, whether they live here or they live in elsewhere, to come back to look at their hometown, to look at the artifacts, architecture, landscape, ecology. So we make a decision that we want to have opening in the springtime, and then we decide we're going to have a series of forums and workshops to follow that. So we clean up the abandoned school, and we spend 3 weeks with our teams, and then we have make an announcement. We invite people to come. So over 100 villagers come back to the openings, and also visitors as well. We have lion dance, Hakka lion dance, and then we turn the classroom. We reuse the tables and chairs and make exhibition for the architecture and landscape for 3 months, attracted many people to come back and take a look, or visitors to visit. We do installation, timber installation, evoke senses of ways of gazing water, ways of looking at mangroves. We find the beaches extremely beautiful, looking at the harbor. So we make this, we call tidal stool installation, a stool that for people to sit there and look at the waterfront, the tidal changes, but also allow when the tidals comes, the porosity of terracotta allowed habitats to grow. And they become very popular interactions, beach furnitures in a way, that for visitors to play around and take photos. We make forums, invite scholars, and then we are surprised, the small classroom packed with villagers and visitors coming to listen to this very serious conservation strategy in the places. And we start to identify not only all villagers, all generations, but particularly younger generations of the villagers who actually who were born or grew up in new towns and different in Hong Kong. But every year they come back for the Chinese New Year, and they actually have a lot of concerns about their hometowns. So we start to realize issues that critical issues need to be addressed. Then we create the concern about toilet, lack of public toilets. So we have a forum on toilet in the summer times. So from spring to the summer to the autumn, we bring the exhibition to North Point, Hong Kong Architecture Biennale. So we bring the villagers and the concerned group to Hong Kong to have dialogues with other groups who are working on other places for countryside conservation or revitalization. And we start to also create events for volunteers to come into the village of Gopong to work with us on the project that we intend to do to clear up the site. And then, of course, gradually they were featured in newspaper and they won some architecture awards. But we also, more importantly, we realized the urgent critical issues of the villages. The school, damages school class buildings need to be restored. There's a leaking because of the embankment gate leaking, and it floods the villages during the typhoon seasons. And most of the problems, concerns coming from the community need an action. And they're mostly about infrastructure and public spaces. So with this idea, we start to be able to, with this knowledge, we start to be able to say, we have a strategy. Our strategy for the Gopong, perhaps it's about we take actions. We took opportunities of what can be done first. And if we can start from one project, we can gain confidences and trust from the villagers as well to start the next projects. So we start our first, and we can move from point to line to a network. And all this is about micro renewal, and we call that acupuncture. So we started a school renovation that is clearly needed. Next to the school, there's a school annex in the middle of that, in the middle of the photo, and the roof and the raft, the trusses has been damaged. So we measure, survey, we studied the trusses, study the structure, and look at the tile and see what can be improved. We value, of course, the very sophisticated tile construction, and we definitely need to preserve it. So we're thinking maybe this annex building can be a common room for the villagers, a living room for the villagers. And then if they are restored in that, then many villagers who already doesn't have a house, the house has already become a ruin, that when they come back in the Qingming Festival, they also have a place to stay and to talk to their friends, or maybe have a cup of tea. And then the houses should be able to be brighter and look at the fields beyond. And they also should have clean, state-of-art toilet right next to that. The houses can be, the common room can have better interaction faces with the patio, the plaza in front of that. So the school plaza can be the entrance point for people who hiking and arrive Gopong. They can have culture exhibition, they can bring into cultural, and therefore we have the design, get endorses, supported by the villagers, we prepare tender documents, and then now it's under construction and is to be opened sometimes later this year. We started our second project, Ruin Garden, which in the process of we make our first projects, Mr. Song, who owns a house in the Lao Wei, say, hey, Mr. Wang, Professor Wang, I have a house there. I'm very happy to give it to the CCO office support to make it a public space, a public garden for Lao Wei. And then we look at, actually there are hundreds of houses like that in these areas, traditional, beautiful traditional fabric, but grow with for the last 50 years or 100 years because people move out, the water come in, the roof collapse, and the plant grows. They become tree houses. So this very particular but also say ruined but beautiful conditions. In what way we can keep that quality, sustain the quality, but make it safe, make it interesting, and bring in lightweight, reversible construction or ecological construction to make it a place for people who can, visitors who can visit, and also places for the community. So we start to have a strategy about Lao Wei. If we can make one ruin garden or two ruin garden become a public garden and communal garden, but how to do that? We also have no idea. So the first thing we do is cleaning up. We do the first cleaning, we do the second cleaning. After the third cleaning, we start to have a better idea about every part of this building. We start to make model. We realize that the collapsed bricks and tiles already piling up a landscape, like small mountains, 1 meter high within the wall. And then so we start to draw the contour line of the ruin, the house, the garden, the estate. And then we decide to slow down, because if we get professional to clean it, very soon they're going to just move everything out. And then we will lose the traces or the records of what had happened for the house for the last 200 years. So we invite volunteers to come over, and then we treat them a Hakka meal, and then everybody work there to, by hands, like archaeologists, take out the debris, take out the brick, and they discover where is the kitchen, where was the bathroom, where have stoves, and where was the places that they store water. Everybody get very excited about it, and everybody become a researcher in the process. So at the end, they get a certificate, and then we get to know better about houses. We start to form step by step, gradually form idea. How can we restore the house? It is about 4-unit houses, but it's also about every fabric, walls, doors, windows, trees, vines. In what way we start to think practically, in what way we should get a structural engineer to come in, that we can conserve the fabric of that. So this is just started. And then if we are able to, in 1 year, have a ruin garden at the end of this house, and then with the current entrance and of that, maybe in 5 years, we are able to, we already identify actually a few other houses that has the potential. Maybe we can have about 10 places in the Lao Wei, almost abandoned villages, to bring back some public spaces. We should also design a route for people to go in through that, not interfere most of the houses over there. So a carefully paved route to monitor, control.